Hello, everyone. Hey, welcome to another episode of The Front. Thank you for taking the time to tune in and join me today. I appreciate you. Couple quick things. This is a live leadership lesson. It's Wednesday night, which means we're going live with a very special guest. I'd like you to make sure that you click the notification icons both on YouTube as well as on Facebook so you get notified when I go live. I'm trying to get the chat room open here while we're launching it. There we go. And I'll tell you what, also I do other episodes of The Front every Sunday, which are more training style uploaded podcasts. So click those notification icons. We'd love to have you join us. And you can check out the website at leadtheteam.net for free sales training, for motivational content, and for leadership tips. So I'll tell you what, we are getting ready to go live with my very special guest, Mr. Ben Gay III, right after this.
Thanks for tuning in to Lead the Teams. The Front.
Yes, that's right. We are live. I am here with Ben Gay, the third of the closers. He's right there. I always point the wrong direction. Ben, how are you doing this evening?
I'm doing fine, Mike. How are you?
I am doing absolutely fantastic, especially now that you're here and we're live and we're going. So I really appreciate you taking the time to tune in with me and share some knowledge, share some of your background in sales, share some of your leadership tips and just all the wisdom that you have. I really appreciate you taking the time out to do that with me tonight.
I hope I have some wisdom, but I appreciate you saying that. I'll be sure and tell Gigi that I might have some wisdom.
I'll follow it up with an email so that you'll have it in writing too, right?
Thank you.
So, yeah.
Thank you.
So do me a favor, if you would, as we're getting started here, if you would just introduce yourself, give a little bit of a brief history. You have a really colorful background when it comes to sales and motivation and leadership. And so if you could give the viewers maybe a 2 or 3 minute synopsis of what it is that is Ben Gay III and just share a little bit of your business background and such.
Happy to do it. You've just asked a Southerner to give you a 2 to 3 minute answer to something that's a bit of a problem, but I'll do my best.
It could happen.
Normal kid, moved to Atlanta when I was about 6. Atlanta is my emotional home. I haven't lived there in many years, but I go back frequently. And if you and I met on the plane, you said, "Where are you from?" my answer would be Atlanta. We'd have to talk for a while before I admitted I'd lived in California for the better part of 50 years. My start in sales was I was born into a family of salespeople. Everybody, all my aunts, all my uncles, everybody we knew, all the members at East Lake Country Club, right down the street from where I grew up, where we were members for many years. Everybody was either in selling, or that's how they became chairman of the board of Coca-Cola or chairman of the board of Home Depot or whatever. So I almost didn't know anything else. But there came a day when, with my first wife, who has passed away, Marcia, I was putting her through nursing school, and I was working for my father for $100 a week, about $1,000 a week now. It's not quite as bad as it sounds, but it was thin. And so I picked up the Atlanta Journal-Constitution on Wednesday, September 15th, 1965, turned to Help Wanted or whatever you look for, and there was nothing in there I could do. I mean, literally nothing, because I can't type and fix plumbing, and I'm not a psychologist. I looked through everything. There was just nothing there. And then I happened to see, I'd never looked in the want ads before, business opportunities. And I saw a little ad said, if you know anything about marketing plans and want to make more money, dial this number. So I didn't know what a marketing plan was, but I stepped into a phone booth because I did want to make more money. And the phone booth was cleverly disguised. It was cleverly disguised as a phone booth. It was a rocket ship. I stepped in, closed the door, dialed the number, tried to interview the guy to see if he was worthy of me coming by to visit with him. And
you were how old when you were checking his worthiness?
22 or 3.
Okay.
So I somewhere deep, 4 or 5 minutes deep into my interview of him, he said, "Mr. Gay, I'm not the man standing in a phone booth answering want ads. Where are you?" And I told him. Turned out, by coincidence, I was about 3 blocks from his office. He said, "Great, you've got," I think he gave me 5 or 10 minutes to be standing in front of his desk or he said, never call this number again, and he hung up.
That's to the
So
point.
my run, yeah, it was. I thought it was an effective recruiting tool. So I jumped in the waiting car, my running buddy, high school friend, running buddy, and the greatest salesman, as it turned out, I ever worked with, Jimmy Rucker, James H. Rucker Jr., was sitting there. He worked for my father, too. I jumped in the car and I said, quick, 1447 West Peachtree Street, Suite 300. And he said, what's up? I said, we're going to be rich. So we ran down, drove down, ran up the out of the parking garage into the elevator and up to his office. Introduced myself with about 60 seconds to spare to the receptionist, turned around, and there was a curly-headed guy sitting there, and I, being friendly, said, hi, my name's Ben Gay, what's yours? And he laughed and went into all the Ben Gay jokes, sorry, I didn't mean to rub it in, etc. And I'm used to that, so I let him run through it, and then I said, what's your name? And he said, Zig Ziglar. And I said, with a name like Zig Ziglar, you're making fun of Ben Gay? You got to be kidding me. Well, I'd never heard of Zig, nor had anyone else. He was a cookware salesman from Columbia, South Carolina. But we had both answered the same ad, had come to what we thought was the same interview. It turned out it was a small opportunity meeting. Bill Dempsey, the guy who ran the ad, got up and drew the circles that you see in an MLM presentation. And we joined up. We each, Jimmy Rucker and I, and Zig separately, put in $91.42, and it took off. Zig had a little more experience than I did, so he took off faster. But by the end of the year, we'd pretty much caught him. And in that, I didn't make anything in the first 6 months. Last 6 months, I made $101,000 part-time. That's $101,000 to today's figure, almost $1 million in today's money. And so it was literally a rocket ship. Then I won a big national sales contest. The secret prize was presidency of the company. So I became president of Holiday Magic when I was way too young to be president, but I was enthusiastic, wasn't afraid to ask questions, and so I hung on and rode it till we were taking in the company was taking in $1 million a day, $3.5 billion in today's money, and had expanded to 5 companies, each with basically the same marketing plan, and each was in 25 countries. So I went from needing a job in a phone booth at $100 a week to running 125 companies around the world in about 2 years.
That is crazy, man. That I had heard
That
that
is.
because it's crazy. It's crazy then. It's crazy by today's standards. So let
Yep.
me ask you a quick. So fast forward and like I said, I know there's a lot of colorful points in between there too. But what is it that you are doing currently then? Fast forward, obviously you've been in sales all your life, and you're an author of what, a dozen or more books. What is it that
I've
you're doing
written
today?
24, 12 under my name,
Oh my
12 for other
gosh.
people, or more than 24. 24 is best I could remember the titles. I found a book
Okay.
the other day I forgot I'd written. So maybe it's 25. But what I do today is almost exactly what I did then, minus the cosmetics. I teach other people how to sell. Which I was doing as president of Holiday Magic. I was, president has numerous concepts behind it. I was
Right.
the chief sales trainer and cheerleader, and I could get some town they were getting 100 people a night. If I showed up, they got 1,000 people. So I did that, and in those sessions I explained the business, of course, but I taught people how to sell, and then started the why don't you write a book? Why don't you write a book? So eventually I started writing books and added the Closers series
Hmm.
to the concept. And along the way so one of the books I wrote is called Sales Closing Power by J. Douglas Edwards, the great sales trainer. But I wrote it for him after he died from
Wow.
his seminar notes. I wrote it for his family after he died, from his seminar recordings and my personal notes of my time with him. So
Great.
basically, when friends call and say, what are you doing now? I'm almost embarrassed by the question because I've been doing almost exactly the same thing for 52 years.
Yeah. No. I know you've been just going and going and going. So do you anticipate slowing down anytime soon? or this is still the
Well,
beginning?
as long as my health holds up, I want to keep going. Cavett Robert expressed the desire to. He said, "Tell me if I'm embarrassing myself. If I get old and start embarrassing me, one of you guys tell me." He was the co-founder with me and several other people of the National Speakers Association, so we promised to do that. Ern Westmore, the great Hollywood makeup artist who was our vice president of beauty and fashion, died on stage in front of 5,000 people at the Park Sheraton Hotel introducing me. Ladies and gentlemen, Ben Gay III, boom, hit the floor.
Wow.
If I'm in good health right up until that time, that'd be a great way to go.
Yeah.
If not, I'll slow down a bit. But was gonna slow down. I even announced that I would retire at 75 when I was 70. And I'm 76 now. And as 75 approached, it frankly didn't seem like a very good idea. And then some people approached me who were fascinated by the time I had spent with Dr. Hill. Dr. Napoleon Hill was my personal mentor and worked for me the last 2-3 years of his life. And they're building a company around me called The Last Protege. If your viewers want to go check it out, it's thelastprotege.com.
I'm going to
all
type
the last
that over here. Yeah, because
okay,
I saw that. I had seen that from another show you were on, and I'm excited to see where that goes, what it contains.
Well, it's going to be a international mastermind group, oversimplified, with some normal mastermind groups within it and big meetings and so on. And it may be, Mike, we'll see, it may be the biggest thing I've ever done. Some are already saying it's the most important thing I've ever done. So fortunately, though, other people are doing most of the work. All I have to do is show up and be Ben Gay.
That's awesome. So, Ben, let me ask you, because you've been openly have been one of the top salespeople, if not the top salesperson, in every organization that you have been involved in, right? Is that an accurate
everyone.
Statement? So,
yeah, it is.
So what do you attribute to, I mean, that takes a lot of, to me, because I've been in sales for a number of years, and for me looking at it, like I've been on top, I've been second and third place, and to me it takes a lot, one, to get on top, to get to the top of the board and be number one, but it takes a lot to stay there too, doesn't it? Because then you have people that start chasing you. So what would you attribute your overwhelming success? Is there something that you could say, I mean, is it any one thing, or is there a culmination of things that allowed you to get to the top and maintain it?
Well, I get up early and I work late, and when necessary, I work 7 days a week. It's not necessary very much, but when it is, I do. And the truth is, everybody thinks I'm very competitive. It may be in a board game with the family, I can get a little aggressive, but in business, I've never really been competitive. I won a national sales contest. The mystery prize was being president of the company, and I didn't know I was in the top 10. I was doing my job day in and day out. My father was a food broker. We were at the National Food Brokers Association meeting in New York one day, and we went into somebody's suite. I forget which company it was, but one Stouffer's, somebody that he represented. And they said, now, next quarter, if you do so much, we will send you a brand new color television, back when color television was sort of exciting. And my father, I'll clean up the language, but the gist of it was he told him to put this television where the sun didn't shine, because he said, I sell all of your product every day that I possibly can, not because I'm going to win a television, and now not out of fear I'm not going to win a television. So I'm going to do what I'm going to do. Don't even tell me about your contest. And if that wins a television, you know my address. We went back home. About a week later, the television showed up long before the contest was over, and they apologized for insulting him. So it's not like I was trying to stay on top or trying to win this. I come early, I stay late, I work on weekends if necessary. I learned the scripts, and if they don't have a script, I wrote the script and then learned the script, because I want to give the most effective sales presentation I possibly can. And then, being an eternal optimist and having learned a few magic closes, I'm not afraid to ask for the order. which is where most salespeople go astray. They're lazy to start with, so they don't get in front of a lot of people. They don't do what they're supposed to do. When the customer comes in, or they go to them, or they're on the phone, they give whatever comes to their head at the time, but not necessarily an effective, professionally designed sales presentation. And then they're afraid to ask for the money. Doesn't bother me. My closing rate, not if you call to buy some books, but my closing rate among big ticket sales for years has been right at 86%. And the reason is I know what I'm doing. And when I say to you, and here's the magic close, I'll share it with your folks. You sort of got to know what got you there. But my magic close, I probably use it 95% of the time. We'll pretend like you're the customer.
Okay.
Mike, based on what you've told me, here's what I suggest we do. Doom, 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 doom. Fair enough?
Okay.
And 86% of the time they say yes. And I don't say that till I know the answer to the question. I'm like a lawyer who in court, they're taught never ask a question to which you don't know the answer.
Right.
When you're ready to buy, I don't care if it's over the phone, in person, even on the internet if there's any exchange. When you're ready to buy, I literally feel an atmospheric pressure change, like you're in a room and somebody opens a door behind you. You know that they open the door. I feel that. And one of the cute things that always has amazed my various staffs over the years, if I'm talking to you on the phone, even in person, but if I'm talking to you on the phone, especially as I near that point, I start filling out the order form. I'm still one of those who prefers a piece of paper. I start filling out the order form. You think you're still making the decision. I'm already filling out the order form because I felt the change. Decision. Yeah. I felt the atmospheric pressure change, and I'm not afraid to pull the trigger. The worst they can say is no. I figured up one time. I don't have the figures in front of me, but I figured out how many presentations I've probably given a day for 52 years, and et cetera, and figured out not the 86% that everybody's impressed with. I figured out the 14%. I wish I had it on the desk. It's within arm's reach somewhere. But what it meant was, I'm going to make up a number. It doesn't make any difference. You'll get the point. Sure. It means that 33,000 people have heard a Bengay dynamic sales presentation, just like the Closer series teaches you to do. 33,000 said no. So
yeah, you still kept going. That's But
if I feared closing, 33,000 no's probably would have done me in. But that's only 14% of what I do. The other 86%, they say yes.
So what's the other 86? You made the 33,000 up, but in that scenario, what is that? It's 8 times that. I mean, it's 350,000 yeses or something.
Yeah. So, whatever it is.
So
I would bend down and look for the piece of paper, because it's interesting, because when I went to figure it out, roughly how many presentations have you given? I figured 5 a day. There have been times I've given hundreds in a day through group closing. Sometimes I haven't given any, but I just said, all right, let's work with the number 5 times 52 years times, I think I just said 5 days when it's really 6 or 7 days frequently. And it came up to some rather impressive figure. I went, whoa. I remember said to Gigi, look, Gigi, this is how many sales presentations I've given. She said, how many did you miss? I said, 14% of them. Boom, 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 boom. I went, God. If I'd gone into selling and the Lord had said to me, Ben, 33,000 of your upcoming clients are going to say no, I probably would still be in the food brokerage business working for my father.
That's a lot of times to hear no, especially when you've gone through the whole presentation, you've poured your heart and soul into it, and you've spent the time.
Right.
So kind of to recap what I'm hearing you say, because when I'm talking about what kept you at the top, and I think it's really unique that you say, well, hey, I wasn't trying to be at the top. The best part, I think the very beginning, you said, look, I just did my job. I think there's a lot of power in that statement. If there were more people right now that just did their job, do you know how effective their lives could be? Do you know how much they would flourish? I mean, at least my perspective, if there was more than just did their job.
In The Strangest Secret, Earl Nightingale's great recording, and thanks to all the things I learned, Earl is the voice of our companies. He worked for us. In The Strangest Secret, he says, just do your work. Not
Hmm.
just your work, but a little more for the lavishing's sake, that little more that's worth all the rest. And obviously it's sunk in since I can still say it 52 years later.
Yeah.
Uh, that was a big thing. And my father's thing, he wasn't trying to teach me any lesson, but watching my father, and I remember sitting there in fear. He just told these people to put their color television set console where the sun doesn't shine, and I knew it was one of our biggest accounts, and therefore had to be big part of his income. They took it because they knew how good he was. He could get
Sure.
away with it, and he won. He won. I'm sure he really won it eventually, whenever the contest was over. But he got it up front.
That's awesome. So let me ask you, steering from the sales portion, what, because you've worked with a lot of people that are in key leadership roles. You know, somebody like
Yes.
Zig Ziglar, who over time was certainly a revered sales leader. You certainly are. I know you spent time. We talked a little bit before I clicked the live button. Spent time with astronauts, the space shuttle. What year range was that? And which launches was it?
Well, I watched 14 take off. Was my first launch, Apollo 14, a big Saturn V-B rocket.
Hmm.
I was invited down to watch it take off. By accident, I then met a lot of the astronauts at a party that was thrown in my honor the night before. And they're just giving them some ideas, sales and marketing. They were all gathered around me. I thought they were the heroes. Obviously they were, but I thought they
Right.
were the celebrities. They were gathered around me like at the guru's feet, wanting to know how they could do a better job. Not flying, they got that part down, but they wanted to know about working with their. For instance, at this party, I was astounded to see astronauts introducing themselves to members of the ground crew for the first time. They'd never met them. If you're going to strap me in the top of a Saturn V-B rocket and ignite it and send me to the moon, I really want to be buddies with the people who put it together, took it out to the launch pad, and sent it off. That just makes common sense to me.
So
So
they'd
we set up
never.
a system.
I'm gonna just stop you there for just a
No,
second. They'd never met him prior to that.
well, in
I mean,
passing, hi, how are you? To the degree they had to meet them.
right?
But if you're sending me up in a rocket, I got to meet you. I
No,
want you to call.
absolutely.
I want your kids to call me Uncle Ben. And if that thing blows up and I don't come back, I want you to have to explain to your kids what you did to
Right.
me. So we set up a social networking thing. Just made common sense to me, and they probably did it right up to the end of the shuttle program, and probably will do it again. The other thing, they were always trying to raise money, not raise money, but get their budget increased. NASA's a very small, less than 1% of the federal budget is NASA. Today,
Right.
probably less than that, because they're just
Yeah.
paying the Russians to send them up. And so I said I had already met probably 100 astronauts that happened to be there for 14 that were on flight status, and they only sent up 3 at a time.
Hmm.
And trained a backup crew. So 6 were in training. I met 100. I said, "What do the rest of you do?" Well, we're in training. I said, "I got that. Yeah, we're all in training. What do you do during the day? What's your job?" Many of them didn't really have a job except
Hmm.
be in training. So I said to Miles Ross and Dr. Davis, the two heads of NASA at the time, "You got 100 sharp, bright, articulate people basically doing nothing most of the time. And then NASA whines about they don't have enough budget. Why don't we send them out to call on schools and business organizations and tell them all the wonderful things NASA does? Do you have a list of what exists today that would not exist were it not for NASA and our efforts to get to the moon?" They brought in a thing that looked like the New York City phone book of all the things you and I would not have: digital watches, digital anything,
Right.
miniaturization of whatever, computers. The computer that's sitting right in front of me now has more firepower in it than the computers that sent Apollo 11 to 17 to the moon. But that came from NASA because they needed it, so it got developed. So I said, send people out and tell them the benefits. If your dad has a heart attack tonight, when the ambulance shows up and they hook him up and start treating him in the ambulance, that's from NASA. And I said, the average person doesn't know it. Let's go tell them and ask them to put pressure on their congresspeople to get us more money. So those oversimplified were my two big contributions to NASA. Other than that, I hung out with the astronauts. I rode the Vomit Comet once, 26 weightless moments between Orlando, wherever we took off from, probably the Space Center. Took off from there and flew to Key West and back, 26 weightless moments. I flew the Lunar Lander Simulator to the point it was so realistic. Somewhere around here I have a recording as Jim Erwin told me to call out the altitudes. Well, I'm looking down at what looks like the moon coming. I don't mean it was sort of like the moon. It was the moon coming up at us. And he said at about 1,500 feet, he said, start calling out the altitudes. And you hear me go, 1,500 feet, 1,000 feet, 900 feet. By the time we got down to 100 feet and less, I sounded like Minnie Mouse. My brain was saying, my God, we're landing on the moon and you don't know what you're doing. So part of it was fun and exciting to talk about. Yeah, I was in training. But that's basically my two major contributions. Let's get out and tell the world all the wonderful things we've done. Meanwhile, back at the fort, let's make sure that the people shooting you off to the moon are your friends and buddies.
I think those are I think those are very important. And I think also the interesting piece that you brought up where you were talking about, it's like personal branding for astronauts. You were doing personal branding with NASA and the astronauts and stuff before it was a thing, right? Now it's like come back around. Now everybody's like, oh, you got to personally brand yourself. You got to go tell people about you. And you were doing that at that time. So with all the engagement you've had with many of these, the astronauts and the leadership and all of the different executives over time, and you were starting, the ML, I don't know if you want to call it MLM or network marketing.
We called it network marketing. The attorneys general called it pyramid schemes, but it was the same.
But all
same
of those
business.
places, all of those places you've been engaged in, and the 800. You started 800 call centers, didn't you? Like 800 number of call
Opened
centers?
the first call center in the world about 7 miles from where we're sitting right now.
Wow. So, well, where you're sitting right now.
Yeah, where I'm sitting.
So where
I'm self-centered. It's always where I am.
I got it. So what would you say are the maybe 2 or 3 really key characteristics that would define someone in a leadership role? If you said, hey, if you're going to be moving into not necessarily a management role, but a leadership role, here's the 2 or 3 things from the lips of Ben Gay that you need to really be working on.
I would surround myself with the best people I could possibly get, whether it's on a friendship basis informally, if I can't afford to hire them into the business. But the goal would be to have them in the business working for me. And I would set up a mastermind group. Dr. Hill taught me that when I read his book in 1965, and he started teaching me face-to-face when he came to work for me in 1967. I would get my personal desk in those days was a big conference table, and I had the chair. My chair looked a little different than theirs, but I had the chair in the middle of the bow on the conference table and had 12 chairs around it. And the reason I did that, there was a conference room before I got there, but the reason I took it over as my office was most of the decisions I made, I got good people around me. I had some of the top financial guys, purchasing guys, art department guys, and advertising people and all, rather than, so I didn't just get them in with me, the financial people, when there was a financial decision to be made. They were in the building. Why not use them? Dr. Hill sat in on numerous board meetings because our deal was he worked at the end of my conference table, and nothing was held back from him. Anything that was going on, he was in on, and whenever he was in town, and he was free to speak up or just keep writing. He wrote incessantly, or just keep writing. Sometimes he'd wait for everybody to leave and then give me a suggestion or what have you. But I formed instinctively mastermind groups to get the very best input I could, and then, as I think George W. Bush called himself, I was the decider. And I'm not afraid, just like I'm not afraid to ask for an order, I'm not afraid to decide. I've been wrong from time to time, but I find that you need to take action. that, the call center business, I won't bore you with the whole story, but the call center business, I had an original concept for what it was going to do. 10 years later, when I left that business, and it was doing extremely well, we were taking in incoming calls, about 60,000 calls a day, and outgoing calls, we were probably I really don't know, but we were probably making 20,000 outgoing calls, selling things a day. Wow. When I left the business, 99.5 or a little over, but we'll call it 99.5% of the business, what the business was not my original idea. My original idea was less than 0.5%. I was wrong. But in June of '76, we flipped on the phones anyway. I didn't know I was wrong yet. I discovered that in the coming months. But we flipped on the phones and took action. So when we flipped on the phones, there was no industry. I had to create the 800 call center industry. There was no company or call center other than ours. And 95% of all Americans did not know that a toll-free number, an 800 number, was toll-free to them. They suspected it was long distance, so when they talked to our telephone reps, they yelled because it was long distance, and they talked really fast because they thought maybe they were paying for it, even though all of our ads said call toll free. You don't have to say that anymore, but now call toll free, whatever. So it was an interesting time, and it was very successful, but it wouldn't have happened if at some point I didn't pull the trigger. Call it was back then, it was Pac Bell, but call Pacific Bell and say, okay, flip the switch, June 15th, 1976. And then we sat there, my 2 or 3 little old ladies around a card table, that's how we started, in a locked, bonded facility, locked and bonded so no one would walk in and see it was me and 2 little old ladies on a card table with a dead plant. And we sat there, we'd already run ads and recruited people and so on. We sat there for 2 hours, as best I recall, and the phone didn't ring. And I remember thinking, what am I doing? Because the phone lines back then for an 800 number was $10,000 per line per month plus overtime. And
that's a long 2 hours.
Well, I'll tell you. I almost wore out my arm looking at my watch. But after about 2 hours, the phone rang and it startled us. We all jumped, and I took the first call.
And did you close them?
Well, it was to take a message for somebody.
Gotcha. Okay.
We weren't doing ad response yet. We figured that out as we went along.
That's great. So what I'm hearing you say, and I always take notes with people. That's just for anybody who's watching or watched any one of these. That's my ulterior motive. Is I get to connect with some really awesome people, and I take notes so that it gives an opportunity for me to learn and to share that knowledge and wealth with a lot of other people as well, Ben. So you're saying surround yourself with the best. I've read several books by Napoleon Hill I've read what is it, Think and Grow Rich, that I've read. Right. Gosh, I can't. When I'm saying several books, I've read that book several times. But where he talks about a mastermind group, what's your recommendation? How many people? How would somebody start a mastermind group? How would they? Well, how many people, and where do you begin?
They would go in the coming month or two. It would be a good idea to have registered at thelastprotege.com because that's what the whole concept is based on. Okay. But oversimplified, all it is 10 or 12 like-minded people sitting around a table. I like it where they're not in direct competition. I wouldn't want 2 auto dealers, for instance.
Right.
In a group I worked with years ago in San Francisco, we had David Varner. You probably never heard of him, but Varner Ward Leasing Company was the largest automobile leasing company in the world, based in San Francisco. Therefore, he was the only one at the table and felt free to share his hopes, his fears, his dreams. Somebody else was the head of Sambo's coffee shop his name was Wayne Keys. He could share whatever his issues were. Fritz Maytag owned Anchor Steam Brewing, which is now a huge, successful beer company. But sitting around that table is how he found out what to do with it from other people, because Fritz had zero experience in the beer business. He knew they were floundering, so that interested him as a business person. And he had money. One time, some of the people around that table said, Fritz, this thing isn't going to fly, Anchor Steam Brewing. He said, oh, it'll fly. They said, well, you know, you're losing, it was losing money when you got there, you put more money in it, now it's losing more money, it's not going to fly. And he said, oh, sure it is. They said, why? And he said, because my last name is Maytag. In other words, he had enough money to make it, you know, to hang on and make it fly. But I saw what he did to be successful formed around that table with 12 people. So, and it was just a free exchange of ideas. When you read, when your people read how to set up a mastermind group, one of the great tenets is when you're throwing out ideas, don't criticize, no negative ideas. Get the cumulative wisdom of the group. And then when you have a session where it's time to see what's wrong with it, the cumulative wisdom of the group tells you that this won't work probably, and this won't work, and the reason this isn't working is that. And what it really is, Dr. Hill and I sort of developed a shorthand working together. It's a board of directors that are not paid, you know, unless they happen to work for you anyway. Sure. But it's a board of directors, and that's basically what I assembled in my office, sometimes twice a day. If I was out of town, maybe not for a while, but twice a day, because the guy who works in advertising has fresh eyes, and when he looks at a problem in the purchasing department, he sees things they don't see because they've looked at it for so long, and vice versa.
You get numb to it when you're looking at the same thing
Sure.
over and over. And I think one of the things you said here just a second ago, how I took it, when you're in that initial meeting, it's more about the idea than the execution. Just get everything out. Don't shoot anybody down. Don't shoot anything down. So kind of coming to a little bit to the tail end, I'm going to ask you a question, or actually two more questions, I think. One, if you could, we all hear it said, look, if you could go back in time, Ben, and give your teenage self that one piece of advice. I don't ask that question because you can't give your teenage self advice, but we can give other teenage and young people that are coming up in leadership advice. If there was something that you could say, hey, look, this is something that I wish I had known at that time, what kind of one piece of advice would you give to somebody else that's coming up in leadership right now in 2018?
Well, it goes all the way up to when I was 23 and first joined that cosmetic business. I would have gotten serious sooner. I believed, because I was brought into a business that was founded in 1939, my family's business. It was doing just fine with or without me. I fooled myself into believing that wandering around smiling, you know, Willie Loman in Death of a Salesman, handshake, eye contact, and shine shoes was enough. And older, wiser people, Zig among them, told me, no, you need to learn the presentation. And I go, okay, I'll learn it. But I didn't. And the first 6 months we're in the business, Jimmy Rucker and I made zero money. Not a dime changed hands. We didn't sell a tube of lipstick. And then I was asked to not come to the meetings anymore by the guy who had sponsored me. I found that sort of disconcerting. And long story short, he told me because I was depressing people. I never brought anybody to the meetings because I didn't know the script and didn't know how, because I apparently just thought I'd bump into people and they'd fall for my charms. When I got there, I couldn't give the meeting from the front of the room because I hadn't bothered to learn the script, and it was a word-for-word 47-minute presentation. And when he said, when the lights come up after the movie, people see you here all the time, they assume you're making money, so they call you over to help with their prospects. He said, that's the part that scares me, because you don't know the closing scripts, and so you blow off their prospects. Doesn't hurt you. You didn't bring anybody to start with. So until you learn the scripts, go away. And 10 days later, having just had, by that time we had $5,000 invested. We'd gotten up to the level where you could make money, $50,000 in today's money. 2 kids making $100 a week wasn't a terribly bright move, perhaps, but I had no choice. So I had to learn the scripts. And the last 6 months, we made $101,000 part-time, a little over $1 million in today's money. Only difference, the scripts. I learned how to make an effective presentation. And then, under Get Serious Sooner, a little longer answer than you might want, we were out in San Rafael, California, learning how to become trainers. Zig was in the same class I was in, and several other people. And we were memorizing new presentations, and Bill Dempsey and I were working in a back room, and I forgot my training manual. So I went down the hall to get it, walked into the back of the training room. I wasn't trying to be quiet or devious or sneaky, but they didn't hear me coming. And they were William Penpatrick, the owner of the company, very famous guy at the time, and ran for governor of California against Reagan, and multi-millionaire. And the current president of the company, the guy I replaced later, Fred Pape, they had their backs to me, and they were looking at a Sony Betamax recorder, reel-to-reel videotape that had been filmed that morning. And they had the screen up, so they're looking at the monitor. And I heard my voice. They had looked at other people too, I'm sure, but I happened to walk in when I was being replayed. And Fred Pape said, "Darn, he's pretty good." And Bill Patrick said, "I will pay more for the ability to effectively communicate than any other skill." So I did the moonwalk back out of the office. They never knew I was there. Went down the hallway, and Dempsey said, "What's up?" I said, "Well, I couldn't get in the room. They were having a meeting in there. But let's share our manual for now. I'm going to learn this thing cold." And I did, became the top presenter, the top earner, and rose to the top of the organization, including winning the mystery prize in a national one-year-long sales contest, mystery prize being president of the company.
So therefore, it is about the practice, the work ethic, learning the stuff, and I like your line, get serious sooner. I think that goes for a lot of people. If the minute you start to take something serious, it's like flipping a switch, man.
Right.
It is like flipping a switch. So the last question I have, so with all of these different things, like to me, it's so inspiring, and all the different things that you have done, Ben. What would you say in business? What are you most passionate about? What is your one passion in business? Because there's a bunch of these that are connected, but what's that one thing that you're like, that's it, that's my favorite?
I like turning the lights on for people. They were turned on for me by other people. I like to sort of pass the torch on to other people. I've got a book here, and that includes teaching public speaking. That's my little secret trick. Whenever I want to build somebody's confidence up, I get them up in front of groups talking. It does wonders for all aspects of their life. They don't have to want to be a professional speaker or whatever, but I use public speaking as the trick. This book, Don't Let Your Past Hold You Back, by Lamont Bowens. I'm trying to get it. I guess I'm going the wrong way.
I'll slide it over here. There we go.
Okay, by Lamont Bowens. He's when I met him, he was an 18-year-old black gang member, no high school education. And he came to a public speaking class I was teaching in Lompoc, at the federal prison in Lompoc. And I got him involved in public speaking. His goal when he got out, I am answering your question, what am I most passionate about? But he's just a great example of it. I hope you can't hear that. I'm hearing a ringing through my ears. Anyway, his plan when he got out was to stick up somebody, get $300 or $400 and finance his way back into the drug business. And I talked to him a couple of times. I just thought there was maybe a little more to him than that. So he asked if he could meet me, and I said sure. I told someone to tell him sure in the public speaking class. Okay, well, as long as I don't have to speak in public, that's not a problem. So he walked into the side door into the cafeteria where the meetings were held. I'm guessing 50 or 60 people were there. And I said, I always said it out of habit, whether there were any ladies or not. I'd say, ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Lamont Bowen. And he was on. He was standing in front of 50 people, and he hadn't sat down yet.
Oh, that's
And
great.
yeah, for 4 or 5 minutes, he did a wonderful job. He didn't have much inventory, but what he did was great. He had sort of a Martin Luther King speaking style about him. And I thought, whoa,
Okay.
I really got something to work with here. I got him going. He became a leader there. He's dropped, sort of got away from the wrong people, and there are a lot of wrong people in that situation.
Right.
And now I helped him get his GED, taught him some things, and I administered the tests for GED there anyway. And then when he got out, Gigi and I helped him get through college. And then he announced he wanted to go to law school, which I thought was sort of funny because I didn't think he could get a license with a felony. And he was one more gunfight away from spending the rest of his life in prison. But I thought, okay, be sure you can get it, that it's legal. And it was. He failed the bar 3 times. He's a very smart guy, but not a good test taker, sort of like me. I wasn't a good test taker. But now he's a practicing, successful attorney, 18-year-old high school dropout, drug dealer, gang member, to practicing attorney. When people say, what are you proudest of in business? It's Lamont Bowen and a few thousand other people that I taught at San Quentin and at Lompoc and at Frontier, the women's prison, and a few at Folsom up here near us. But by then I was sort of burned out. I'd spent 11 years in and around prisons, and that was enough for me. But that was it, because like when I ran a lawn mowing business as a kid, I hated to mow a lawn that didn't need mowing, because when you got to the end of the line and turned around, you couldn't see what you'd accomplished. Hard to find where you'd been. I like to cut grass that needs cutting, so when I cut it, I can see what I've accomplished. Therefore, although I use the same techniques in prison that I've used in private business, including mastermind groups and public speaking and so on, therefore, I like and admire what we accomplished there more than anything else, because you can see the difference. You can take Lamont Bowen from his situation to attorney. You get to see what you cut.
Right. You see the fruits of your labor. You see the result. I
Right.
think that's great. I really like the line. I know I keep repeating some of these. They're your lines. I just love them. That's why I write this stuff down. But when I said, what are you most passionate about? And you said, turning the lights on for others. I think that's
Yeah.
classy, man. That's
It's
awesome.
just so well. It's selfish. I mean, I get a joy out of doing it. If it made me depressed, I wouldn't do it.
Right.
But selfishly, I just love it when somebody finally gets the message.
No, I think that's fantastic, Ben. So do me a favor, kind of the tail end here. Anything else that you want to share before I take us out and ask you? No. Okay, just making sure.
No,
If
I'm
there's
fine.
any final thoughts.
If you're a salesperson, let me suggest that you get, and this isn't a pitch to sell books, it won't affect my lifestyle one way or the other, but
Okay.
people are always saying to me, Mr. Gay, I'd give anything to know what you know about selling. And my response to that is, well, I got good news. It's about $65. And I send them to a website that sells my stuff. You can go to my website, bfg3.com. Love to
Okay.
have you do that and get in our loop, and we'll send you some stuff from time to time. If I'm coming to your town to do a seminar, that's where I announce it. So that would be nice. But if you want to get what is everything I know about selling, I've written down. It's in 4 or 5 books. And if you go to stores dot ebay.com/Ronzoni Books, RONZONE Books, all one word, of course, Ronzoni Books. They offer my material with special pricing and free shipping. So if you want to know what Ben Gay knows about selling, you're $65 away.
That's fantastic. So I will. I'll make sure for anybody who's watching. I always recap this in a blog, put it on the website, share it on the YouTube channel and such. I'll make sure and include that link. So anybody who's interested, you said it's bfg3.com, right?
That's my website.
That's
Go there
your
and
website.
sign up.
Or
but
stores.ebay.com or /Ronzoni books. Is that correct?
right,
Okay.
that's cheap. We offer the same books at my website, but for more money.
Okay.
The person who runs Ronzoni Books steals books out of our warehouse without paying for them and puts them up on eBay. And the only reason she's allowed to get away with that is she's my wife.
All right. Well, that works. You let it slide. So, Ben, what is the best way for people to get in touch with you if they've got questions, they want to connect with you? Because we've shared a lot of different ones. The last protege.com, that's coming soon. The eBay store, your website. What's the best way for someone to maybe connect with you if they wanted to?
Direct. Yeah, I work by appointment. I've gotten so jammed up I can't.
Sure.
Occasionally I'll catch a call by mistake almost, but that isn't a customer calling to do something. But the best way to start the process, I'm an old-fashioned email guy, is send me an email. Tell me what you want to talk about or what you need, and I'll get right back to you. And if it requires a phone call, we'll set it up. My email is bfg3, B as in Ben, F as in Frank, G as in Gay, the numeral 3 at directcon, directcon.net. And that's what I check every day. Some of the other message services to me is like an Easter egg hunt. I may or may not find it.
Right.
I may or may not look there. The email address I check 4 or 5 times a day, every day, 7 days a week.
And I will tell you, from our communications, you are the best at responding to email. When you say, hey, like when you and I were setting this up, and you're like, hey, Mike, email me. Hey, Mike, I'll email you back. You're right there, which I think is fantastic, because a lot of times you're right. The emails just get lost in the mix. So, Ben,
right.
Thank you.
Not here.
Yeah, no, I'd agree with that. Thank you so much for taking the time to come on tonight, my show, The Front, and join me and share your knowledge, this live leadership lesson, condensing your 50 plus years of wisdom into about 45 minutes here. So I really, really appreciate you. Thank you so much for doing that. And I'm going to go ahead and take us out.
My honor, Mike. Thank you.
All right. So ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for taking the time to tune in and join us today on this live leadership lesson from The Front. If you were watching live, thank you. I appreciate it. Make sure that we, jam those thumbs up. Share the video now that you've seen what Ben has to offer. Share the video on your social media. It's available on my personal Facebook page. I will have it on the Front podcast page here shortly. I will also have it on the YouTube channel. The replay will be there. So make sure you click the little notification icon so you get notified when I'm going live and uploading new episodes. And I'd love for you to join me every Wednesday at 7:05 Eastern Time, because we're going live for a live leadership lesson. And then Sunday, I post additional episodes of The Front, which is all about leading from the front, being in front, continuing to learn and grow, and keep yourself and your people out front. So thank you so much for taking the time to tune in and join us today. I really, really appreciate it. Shout out to my guest, Ben Gay. Awesome, awesome. I just appreciate you. Thanks for sharing your wisdom with everybody. And I will tell you what, everyone, until we speak next, I hope you have an absolutely fantastic day. We'll talk to you soon, everybody.